Junko Kawano, a game designer and writer that I respect a fair amount since about a week or so. Not only because of her involvement with the Suikoden series, but also because she made one of my favorite adventure games. That game being Shadow of Memories, a game that, for all intents and purposes, is far from perfect as the gameplay is virtually non-existent. The voice acting is rather iffy, and just like every other time travel story, one could really question its logic. But I still love it nonetheless, and I probably should review it someday. However, I recently found out that a spiritual successor was made. Or so I've heard, cause really all that Time Hollow and Shadows of Memories have in common is time travel. Now, a quick gander at the game's wiki led me to find that Time Hollow wasn't exactly received all that well. The game was criticized for being linear and having simple gameplay, which kinda makes me think that whoever reviewed it at the time just wasn't very familiar with the concept of visual novels. Just ignore the fact that I basically critiqued another code for the very same reasons though. But yeah, that is what this is. A visual novel. So once again, this game is all about that story, yo. And that story in question stars a strapping young anime lad called Ethan Kairos. Ethan lives the normal anime life with all of the standard character archetypes that come with it.
But then, on the night of his 17th birthday, he has a strange dream.
And when he wakes up, he finds himself in an alternate timeline where his parents mysteriously disappeared 12 years ago. But as video games would have it, Ethan just so happens to find a strange green pen attached to his cat. A pen with which he can open up holes in time by drawing circles onto the touchscreen. And according to a letter from his dad he found while dumpster diving, that pen is a family tradition because anime. And thus, Ethan and his friends go on an adventure to solve this chronological mystery. Now, the game's story kinda has that edgy but still PG-13 anime feel to it. I mean, just look at that Metabots McDigimon-ass Beyblade hair, for instance. It's definitely the type of hair that would go well with a nice day of taking over the world through merchandise and enslaving Western children. And the writing most certainly fits this hairstyle as well. So there's lots of those awkward, not sure if lost in translation jokes and the box standard set of anime friends and family. There is the mom character, who is always smiling and her only noteworthy trait is that her cooking sucks. Then there's the beyond stereotypical otaku nerd who is perpetually horny. And of course, there is also shy and awkward girl together with her best friend Genki but part-time tsundere girl. Not to mention the fact that the game also has a severe case of Brock's Donut syndrome.
These donuts are great! Jelly-filled are my favorite! Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut!
I mean, this is very obviously a Japanese town in Japan with Japanese people. But it's never really treated like it is. And also, some of the names are just these weird mashes of Western first and last names with Japanese first and last names. Not that it really has any kind of relevance regarding the plot or the overall quality of it, but it's just one of those weird things that's really hard to shake off for the first hour or so. Despite that though, the story is actually pretty interesting and it has a lot of crazy twists and turns. I mean, Ethan uses his power very liberally and ends up fucking up so much shit in the process that quite a lot of stuff happens in a short amount of time. It certainly isn't a slow game by any means, as the plot is constantly moving and there's always some kind of mystery on the verge of being unraveled, and it was quite a lot of fun to see it all unfold. You won't be spending any of your time listening to your teachers or doing meaningless tasks either. The game just skips all the bullshit and only shows plot-relevant events, which, considering the pacing of most visual novels, is pretty fucking rare. And not only that, it's also very easy to follow. I mean, it's not uncommon for time travel stories to be a bit confusing. And it's certainly not uncommon for Japanese stories to be a bit confusing as well. But this game is fairly straightforward, as Ethan and his friends always make sure to speak their minds, and pretty much everyone is surprisingly cool with everything that's going on. So you aren't left in the dark about anything, despite things getting quite complicated later on. Which is definitely an accomplishment in and of itself, considering what we're dealing with here. Though you could argue if the way that the characters deal with what's going on is in any way realistic, and also I'd be lying if I said that I'd really cared about any of the characters either. I mean, like I said, most of the characters are all stock anime archetypes, and while some of them do change because of Ethan fucking up the past, they also don't really grow or develop at all, apart from one or two plot-centric characters. Hell, even Ethan is this very box-standard anime hero guy with a heart of gold and a clear set of morals. He will always fight for what he believes is right. And because he's the hero, he always is. No buts, only those of the short-skirted underage variety. Despite the somewhat formulaic characters though, it's still quite a fun little story. However, much like the Phoenix Wright series and Another Code, this fun little story actually does have some stuff in it that vaguely resembles gameplay. Only, compared to those two, it's considerably less interactive. The gameplay in question though centers around flashbacks. At the start of each chapter, the timeline will change and Ethan will get a bunch of flashbacks. These flashbacks show a glimpse of what happened in this particular past, but they're also just images as they're still incomplete and lack any further info. So you need to go around town and talk to people to find out exactly what happened in order to complete said flashbacks. Once it's complete, Ethan can use the hollow pen at the location shown in the image to open up a window to the past. So, for instance, say a character has lost something. Then you need to talk to everyone involved to find out what and where, and once you find the lost item, you can open up a time hole to yesterday near their locker to put the thing in there and make it so as if nothing had ever happened. Now, to some of you, this might seem kinda cool, or as if you have a lot of freedom or something, like, "Whoa dude, you can open up time vortexes? That's tubular, man!" But you can really only do it whenever the story allows you to, as the game is very linear. Thing is that it is a visual novel with just a few point-and-clicky elements here and there. It's not like Another Code or Danganronpa where you still get to walk around manually, or like the Phoenix Wright series where you still have the court cases that require a lot of your involvement and thought. No, everything is pretty much always laid out in front of you. It's more like you're just a bystander rather than an actual participant of the story. You don't even have to put the pieces of the puzzle together yourself either. Ethan does that for you. You just need to shut the fuck up and draw the holes. So, in a way, it's kinda like playing Phoenix Wright, but just without the court sessions. As for the drawing of the holes though, you always get an image of the flashback on the other screen. So it's mostly a case of just drawing the hole in the right place, which, as you might expect, isn't very hard to do. Despite that though, you do have a limited amount of times you can draw a hole per chapter as indicated by this green bar. If the bar runs out, it's game over. Or, well, I would assume so, as it never actually happened to me. Really, I might even go so far as to say that it's almost impossible to screw up, save for one instance where I had to find a thing that was hidden relatively well. But even then, the pen moments are often telegraphed very clearly beforehand by Ethan being all like, "Yeah, we have all the information we need. Let's go, gang." So you're always able to save and start over no problem should you somehow have a hard time figuring out where to put the hole. Although, there is one thing that could potentially screw you over. And that's the fact that it's often very unclear which things are clickable and which aren't. Like, during the tutorial for instance, I tried to get Ethan to spill the beans about his blatantly obvious wank hankies, but he just kept talking about his bed, the fucking bastard. Or how the objects hanging from a wall will still have him do the usual wall commentary no matter where you click. And there are plenty of other examples like that that could easily screw you out of 1 or 2 hit points during your whole expeditions. Either way, that's basically all you do. You talk to friends, draw a hole, and then watch shit escalate even further. I don't really mind all that much, but it does bear a lot of repetition. It's the same few areas over and over, the same few people over and over, similar events happening over and over because time travel, and puzzle-wise it's pretty much the same as well. The game really seems to rely on the story to keep things moving, and in that sense it does an okay job. But I still would have liked to have a bit more variety, as shit does start to feel a bit tiring near the end despite its overall brevity. Also, you could argue if everything really makes sense according to whichever fictional time travel rules you choose to subscribe to. But also, I just don't really give a shit. It's a can of worms I really don't fancy opening right now, and it would also force me to spoil the entire plot. And since that's really all this game has going for it, I'd rather not. In any case, it makes for a pretty interesting story that, despite the kinda bland characters and lack of interaction, was quite cool to see unfold. As I said, there's a lot going on here, and if you are into visual novels, then you could certainly do a lot worse than playing this. And sure, it won't blow your mind or anything, as some plot twists were a wee bit predictable, but I don't really think it tried to be super duper deep or anything like that anyway. I mean, it is a DS game, so similar to most, I guess it at least kept the idea of kids playing this game in the back of their heads. It would certainly explain the shifty anime localization vibes the game is filled with.
Whoa, Mondo cool.
That's right, boys. Mondo cool.